We'll be looking at somehow is some men who go beyond the conventional here and try to do some things that make you put your hand through your mouth, take out your heart, your liver, your kidney, and you hold them in your hand. And somehow you discover that when you fly, you know for sure that everyone got a prayer. Okay, not everyone here. Most guys got prayer books, got religious materials in the plane, and once you enter this turbulence, you see everyone gradually keeping all their books on how to make millions and start to come up with their chaplet, with their rosary, with their prayer materials and everything, believing that this is the time we need to go close to God again. Okay, our aviation freak is here, one who loves aviation even more than those who believe. They work there and they even live from aviation. Mr. Godwin Ike, welcome to the studio, sir.
Hi, good morning.
Very wonderful morning.
How was your weekend?
Well, thank God we got a Saturday rain, a Sunday not too much sun here, and today we're expecting to see a bright, sunshiny day.
That's correct, that's correct. As always, my weekend was wonderful as well.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. Quickly, let's give you some information about Mr. Godwin Ike here. We can have the information page on so that you can contact him as well. He's not just doing this to talk and go. He wants to make it not just like a monologue or just a dialogue between himself and Atta, or a monologue talking to you. He wants to interact with you so that you can follow through here. If the page, okay, that's the page there. The man beside me here, Mr. Godwin N. Ike, the number to contact him is on the screen there. He got his email address there, goddy@yahoo.com, and you have the website, you have the YouTube channel, and you have the Twitter handle here. You can reach him, talk to him, so that he can build together not just one stretch of a monologue here that you watch there and you don't interact with him here. Yes, sir. What are we looking at for today?
Today we'll be dealing with one of those Daredevil pilots. Remember, what brought about this was we dealt with the rise and fall of Nigeria Airways, dealt with the ADC crash and the Soliso crash. It began to appear as if Nigeria is filled with horrible pilots. But no, if you look around the world and see the things that happen, you begin to think that Nigerian pilots are actually saints. And I don't forget that during the Nigeria Airways period that the world agreed that Nigeria Airways pilots were the best in the world. And unfortunately, bad management killed Nigeria Airways, and we are all still bleeding in our hearts, for what happened to Nigeria Airways. And it's our hope that somebody somewhere will put together something and give us another national carrier we'll be proud of. So today we'll be looking at the Tenerife air crash, airport crash actually, because it took place right there on the runway at the airport and slaughtered 583 souls, the highest ever recorded in a single accident in aviation history. 583 slaughtered, and then when you get to find out why that unnecessary runway crash took place, it will only take a daredevil to do what that KLM pilot, did to cause that crash. So let's roll with our, clip one, because we have 8 clips to go very quickly, so that our viewers will.
Beautiful plane there.
Yeah, so that our viewers will enjoy. That's clip one through us. I get my on the flight. That's true. March 27th, 1977 remains the day one of aviation's deadliest crash took place, killing 583 people. It involved 2 Boeing 747 passenger airplanes. One of them was KLM Flight 4805.
One on the screen.
Yes, that very airplane you are looking at, that was the plane involved in that crash. And the other was Pan Am 1736. The 2 airplanes collided on the runway at Los Rodios Airport. That Los Rodios Airport is currently, known as Tenerife North Airport. That's the current name. It's actually in the Tenerife, island. Now we're going to see the history of how this came about. On the Spanish island of Tenerife, Canary Islands. Let's move quickly to clip 2. Because time is usually not our friend on this program. Yes, events leading to the crash. On that fateful day, a terrorist incident at Gran Canaria Airport, also known as Gando Airport on the island of Gran Canaria in Spain, had cost many flights, including the KLM flight 4805 and Pan Am flight 1736, to be diverted to Los Rodeos Airport. That is the Tenerife, if you remember. You know, it's currently known as Tenerife North Airport. The airport soon became congested with parked airplanes, blocking the only taxiway, thereby forcing departing airplanes to taxi on the runway. You know, usually, taxiing doesn't take place on the runway. You taxi on the taxiway, then use a connecting ramp to, get into the runway. Usually arranged in a way that you do just a 90-degree turn and then get ready for your blast off. Okay, but in this case. Anyway, as we go, you will see. You would even see the schematic diagram of, the whole infrastructure on the ground at the airport. Now, thick fog, or rather, I stopped at, became congested with packed airplanes blocking the only taxiway, thereby forcing departing airplanes to taxi on the runway instead. Thick fog, which had drifted across the airfield, prevented control tower and the airplanes from seeing each other. My dear viewers, correct that scene. It's supposed to be double E. A typographical error took place there. So we mean S-E-E-I-N-G. So please correct us accordingly. Let's move to clip 3 very quickly. Clip 3.
Okay, crash.
Yes, that's correct. For both airplanes, Tenerife Airport was an unscheduled stop. Talking about the KLM and the Pan Am. I mean,
that's not their destination.
It wasn't their destination. All right. As their scheduled destination was Gran Canaria International Airport, the KLM crew were Captain Jacob Verduzain van Zanten, aged 50, First Officer Class Muse, aged 42, and flight engineer William Schroeder, aged 48. They had arrived from Amsterdam Airport, Schiphol, Netherlands. The Pan Am crew consisted of Captain Victor Groves, aged 56, First Officer Robert Bragg, aged 39, Flight Engineer George Warnes, aged 46, and 13 flight attendants. They had arrived from New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport, formerly known as JFK. Both flights had been routine until they approached the islands and a bomb planted by the separatist Fusars Amadas Gunches exploded in the terminal of Gran Canaria International Airport, injuring one person. Clip 4, please. I'm just hoping we'll run through our clips so that we can discuss more on all the issues arising. The disaster, diversion of aircraft to Los Rodeos. As a result of the bomb explosion, all flights to the island of Gran Canaria were diverted to Los Rodeos, a regional airport that could hardly accommodate the volume of flights diverted to it. The airport was so small that it had only one runway and one major taxiway parallel to it, and 4 short taxiways connecting the two. We're going to see that diagram, and you appreciate exactly what is being described.
Go ahead.
As the waiting for the reopening of the Gran Canaria Airport lasted, aircraft diverted to Los Rodeos Airport took up so much space that most of them were parked on the long taxiway. The situation rendered the taxiways unusable for taxiing. Based on this situation, pilots resorted to a tricky procedure known as back taxi, or backtrack. This procedure requires departing aircraft taxiing along the runway. Normally, it's a taboo. You're supposed to go through the taxiway and then turn into the runway, at the threshold there to take off. But because of that obstruction by parked airplanes, they use the procedure known as back taxi or backtrack. The procedure requires departing aircraft taxiing along the runway to position themselves for takeoff. Clip 5, please. Here we go, Atta.
The disaster.
Diversion of aircraft to Los Rodeos continues. As soon as the security threat at Gran Canaria Airport was contained, the airport was reopened. Pan Am Flight 1736 was immediately ready to depart from Tenerife, but was obstructed by KLM Flight 4805 because the crew of KLM chose to refuel at Tenerife Airport in order to save time. What had happened was Pan Am was first cleared for to go on the position for takeoff. Unfortunately, they couldn't pass through because KLM was parked right there on the taxiway and getting some fuel. And that took about 35 minutes, so Pan Am had to stay to wait. Okay, but listen to the irony and how this mess came about. After refueling, that was 35 minutes later, Air Traffic Control, ATC, instructed the KLM to taxi down the entire length of the runway. That is backtracking or back taxiing. Okay. Yes, and then make a 180 turn. A 180 degrees is usually a U-turn. If you're heading a direction and you want to go directly opposite where you're going, then you do a 180 degrees turn. Okay. Now, to get into a takeoff position, shortly after, the Pan Am was instructed to follow the KLM. The Pan Am that was supposed to be first to leave ended up being the second because KLM blocked them, taking some fuel, and eventually Pan Am was asked to follow KLM down the same runway. But there was a special instruction, following that an exit that runway. Remember, KLM had positioned, had done a 180 degrees and position for them.
Aramis is facing Pan Am now.
That's correct. I'm so glad you're getting the picture. So Pan Am is now face to face with KLM, but there is an exit that was required for it to turn off and get back to the taxiway at a point that's not obstructed, because they have about 4 short taxiways connecting the main taxiway and the runway. Now listen to what went wrong. I stopped out. After refueling, okay, I've done that. Shortly after, that's the last paragraph, isn't it? Yeah. Shortly after, the Pan Am was instructed to follow the KLM, the same runway, and exit it by the 3rd exit on their left, and then proceed to takeoff point through the parallel taxiway. That was the instruction. But after, what had happened was bad weather had set in, and neither the Pan Am nor the KLM was seeing the other. They weren't seeing, and then even locating that particular 3rd exit was a problem for the crew of Pan Am. So they were sitting on that runway, trying to figure out the exit that they were instructed to follow. But you are going to see what the KLM pilot did. Why I describe him today as the Daredevil pilot of that ugly day. Now let's get to clip 6 and take a quick look at the schematic diagram of what we're describing. Take a look at that diagram, Atta.
The runway is in complete black with a blue or a green line, some lines at the middle.
Okay, let me explain it. You see, starting from your left, you see where you have KLM. Yeah. So that green line is giving you the path that KLM took to go to the runway. And then the blue line is where Pan Am also took. Good. Now KLM had moved in following that green line and gotten to the end and made a 180 degrees and then facing the opposite direction now, getting ready to take off. Now Pan Am was now asked to follow the KLM. That's the blue line. Yeah. So Pan Am now was instructed to follow. You can see exit 1, you can see exit 2, the third exit to your left. Are you seeing that?
I'm seeing third exit.
That's where Pan Am should have turned off to enter back the taxiway on the extreme left. Good. Can you see that? I can see clearly. And then connect back after the KLM had taken off. It will now position for its own.
KLM is now.
That's correct. That was the whole arrangement. But if you see the red spot, can you see the red spot? Yes. That was where the collision took place when the KLM pilot, the captain himself, was so impatient that he wasn't listening to instructions, and he blasted away and met the Pan Am sitting right there. You're going to see more schematic diagrams of how the crash took place. So it's important for you to understand these diagrams so that you know exactly what happened on that ugly day. Now, clip 7, please. Clip 7. Here we go, Atta. Take a look at that photo. On the top, there are 2 photographs. There are one on top, one below it. Okay, you can now see the Pan Am struggling because if you listen to the conversation between the 2 pilots, the captain of Pan Am and his co-pilot who was sitting on the right side of the cockpit, he was the one that noticed that the KLM had blasted off when he now saw its lights. And of course the weather was bad and they were not seeing each other. Foggy. That's right, very foggy. And the poor young co-pilot of the Pan Am said to his pilot, "Get the hell out of here! Get the hell out of here! This guy is on his way." But as he was making to quickly get into whatever ramp that was available to get out of the way, it was too late. It was too late. This guy had attained his V1 speed and had rotated. That is, rotating means pulling on your joystick for liftoff. And after it was pretty too late. He hadn't gone up enough to leapfrog the Pan Am that was sitting there struggling to get out of the way. And then of course the undercarriages hit the Pan Am, and then the one that went up ended up coming down, slaughtering everybody.
The one under?
The one under had about 60-something people surviving, but a majority of them also died because it erupted in fire. But let's get on to clip 8, and you will hear the rest of the story, and then we can discuss more. So if you take us back quickly to 7, I'll show you something on the lower photograph. Clip 7, please. Just 1 second. Clip 7. Get us back to clip 7. And then we can, here we go. You can now see the photograph beneath. As the Pan Am, the KLM had achieved the V1 speed and rotated just as he was about to lift off, he made contact with the Pan Am. Can you see the eruption of fire? Yeah. That's exactly.
In this, the Pan Am, a pilot may likely survive. If you look at the collision point.
Well, I do not think those 2 pilots survived, about 60-something. But let's read through and see exactly what happened. Clip 8, so that we can have a little more time to talk and then get out of the studio. So here's clip 8, Atta. Immediately after the takeoff lineup, the KLM captain advanced his throttle without a clear takeoff run instruction from the ATC. As soon as he turned in, The ATC hadn't asked him to proceed for takeoff. He already put his power and was already humming to blast away. And then, listen to this. In spite of First Officer news, that is the KLM First Officer, warning that ATC hadn't cleared them for takeoff, Captain Valzen Van Zanten, that's his name, in a tone that indicated extreme impatience, interrupted his first officer with a reply. No, I know that. Go ahead and ask. His power was already on, the plane was already rolling, and his co-pilot was saying to him, hey man, we're not yet clear for takeoff. I said, yes, I know. Please ask them. Please ask them.
Clearing. While you are clearing, the man is firing.
You go. Oh, Atta, you are an amazing guy.
No, because at that point you are clearing, the road is, you can't see the runway, and you're asking the man to ask for clarification while you have cleared yourself.
I'm amazed. You get a clear picture of the nastiness of the situation and what that Daredevil captain, did on that day. Now, let's move on. Then after answering him, go ahead and ask. The KLM captain, his first officer, and ATC engaged in a non-standard back and forth conversations. I will explain this after reading through, and I will explain to you about the non-standard conversation. Back and forth, which led the impatient captain into making a false and fatal assumption that they had been cleared for takeoff. The KLM captain, in a state of impatience, missed out on last-minute instruction by the ATC that the runway was not yet clear, because ATC was communicating with KLM and communicating with Pan Am, and the Pan Am captain had told them that they hadn't found the third exit, that they were still groping in the dark and looking for it, and they were still on the runway. He too radioed KLM and was, letting them know that, they should be patient, but he used non-standard language. Of course, that crash changed everything in aviation after that 1977 crash. Today, communication between crew and ATC, that's the air traffic control, is done in a standard, set, and definite fashion. With precision. No, yes, okay, all those kind of language, no. They have devised a set of languages that mean definite instructions that you can't miss when you are told what to do. So let's read through, and then we'll take more on that explanation. The KLM captain, his first officer, and ATC engaged in a non-standard back and forth conversations, which led the impatient captain into making a false and fatal assumption that they had been cleared for takeoff. The KLM captain, in a state of impatience, missed out on last-minute instruction by the ATC that the runway was not yet clear, and that he would be called as soon as situation was okay. The use of the word okay gave the captain of KLM that
was the last one.
Even his co-pilot was still warning him. We haven't been cleared. He said okay. Okay was a non-standard language that shouldn't have been used. But then the man should have listened to his co-pilot, and of course the cockpit management is now being reviewed in such a way that the captain is not the alpha and omega anymore. You can argue with your captain.
The other guy got brains.
Yes, and listen to, you people must agree before you execute anything. In the past, the captain was the alpha and omega of the flight. Anything he said was final, but not anymore. Anybody can make a suggestion, and the superior one should carry the day. Right, that's what the world took out of that ugly crash that slaughtered 583 people. So let's quickly run through and be done with this. As soon as, but he impatiently, I'm now talking about the KLM captain, but he impatiently and in a daredevil fashion. You see the highlight on that word daredevil. In a daredevil fashion, pushed his throttle and proceeded with the takeoff while Pan Am was still on the runway. Bad weather situation didn't help either. KLM crew were already at V1 speed. You remember what I taught you about V1? At V1, you must take off no matter what. There's no chance to stop, assuming you find that something is gone wrong. When you do your first 80 knots call, usually in a takeoff, as you blast away, the flying pilot is looking straight, through the windshield and holding this, his joystick and making sure the plane is aligned and heading out for a takeoff. His co-pilot is watching the instruments and watching his speedometer, and then as soon as he hits 80 knots, it's 80 knots, and then a few more seconds, V1. And then at that V1, no matter what, you must take off. The next few seconds, rotate. And rotate simply means pull on your joystick for a liftoff. And then as soon as shortly after liftoff, he announces V2. And then, of course, you reduce your pitch, get on nicely into the air, and then begin to ascend to your assigned altitude. That's the way it works. But then, here we go. KLM crew were already at V1 speed when they saw the Pan Am right in the middle of the runway. At that point, there was nothing they could do. It was too late. They were doomed. The two planes collided. Daredevil, wasn't it?
Certainly it was. Certainly it was.
Yeah.
Sometimes these are things, moments that when you analyze it today, it looks very simple. But somehow, families still this day, after 1977, when Nigerians were enjoying their Festac celebration, here we saw disaster happening in another part of the world. For Nigerians that day, everyone was talking about Festac.
That's correct.
The world was talking about something a lot different.
That's correct. That's correct. The sad thing about what transpired on that day, with the KLM. Eventually investigation, and that's what I really admire about some of our, American and European friends, the honesty when you realize that you made a mistake, you accept responsibility and attend to it. KLM, after very thorough investigation about what happened, listening through the conversations from the black boxes. Remember they're always orange in color, but fondly known as black boxes. The conversation showed that KLM was responsible for that crash. And KLM as a company took up responsibility and paid all the compensation that had to be paid to families of loved ones lost in that.
But the ones in the plane.
Yes, all of them. KLM took responsibility and paid, because investigation showed that their captain was Daredevil and was impatient and unprofessional in his conduct, and that led to that unnecessarily ugly crash, leaving aviation world with the highest death in a crash, in a single crash in human history.
Thank you very much.
583. Very horrible.
Our time is up here. What will we be looking at next week?
Next week we would see if we can take just one more, Daredevil, and then put an end to all the Daredevil pilots, and then convince Nigerians that our pilots are doing pretty well here, but encourage them to learn from the mistakes of others and the incidents around the world. And I will always say to anyone that listens, airplanes are very faithful machines. They fall out of the skies because human operators can be unfaithful and dishonest.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Godwin Ike here. Like what we heard from what we read, some of us who went through literature, and then something was clear that while we are bringing you all of this, and Mr. Godwin Ike spending his time doing all of this, is to ensure that we'll tread on the path of caution here. In that literary piece about Veramin Agbaisi, it says, when the frog in the front falls into a pit, others behind will take caution. We'll take a break very quickly. When we return from the break, it will be time for our second interview segment.